on out there, ladies and gentlemen. Rip it open for the final day. 1, 2, 3, go. Which team is dominant? Come on! Oh! Come on! Oh! How y'all doing for day 5? Start your morning here with 10 high fives, hugs. Introduce yourself to the last group of people. Go! Grab yourself a high five in the seat.
Friend, I wanna guard your dreams and visions. Just wrap your legs around these velvet rims and strap your hands across my engines. Together we
grab a seat. That's awesome. As you grab your seat, make sure there's more energy in your chair than when you're standing. Wake up the people on either side of you. Go!
Said it's the only thing we know how to do. Work hard, play hard, work hard, play hard. We work hard, play hard, keep partying like it's your job.
In your chair, wake it up.
Work hard, play hard. We work hard, play hard, keep partying like it's your job.
Come on now, let's see that energy in your chair. How you doing back here?
Ladies can't get enough. Got my fitness on looking
What are you doing on there? Wake it up!
Holding down for my city. If they're asking you, I'm not guilty. Only thing that I'm guilty of is making you rock with me. Work it out. Got a gang of cash and it's going all on the ball. Work it out.
Elevate.
And it's going fast cause I feel like a superstar. Work it out. And you may not have it, I might have just broke the law. Work it out. It's your turn to grab it and I make this whole thing yours. Work it out.
Hey, there you are.
Said our hustler's work is never through.
Come on now.
We making it cause we make it move. The only thing we know how to do. Said it's the only thing we know how to do. Work hard, play hard, work hard, play hard. We work hard, play hard, keep partying like it's your job. Work hard, play hard, work hard, play hard. We work hard, play hard, keep partying like it's your
Make the
job.
sound. Unleash your soul with sound. High fives around your chair. Grab a seat. Grab a seat. If you feel better than before, make that fist and say yes. Say yes. Say yes. Awesome. Grab a seat. So, great energy this morning. Day 5, ladies and gentlemen. Our final day together here today. Oh, that dropped the energy out, didn't it? First of all, before we begin our morning here with our disruptors, I just want to thank everybody for yesterday once again. It's amazing. You come here, you're all dedicated to growing your businesses. We have people here from, 59 countries, and 3 languages back there being translated. And everybody here is focused on how to grow their business, take things to the next level. But when we talk about what you really want to do in your dreams, so many of you are so generous in your focus. All the things you wanted to give and contribute, and that's easy to write down, more difficult to do. But I'm here to tell you that I offered to put up $250,000 of matching funds, hoping you guys would match me. And oftentimes we get about 200,000, 300,000. But this group, ladies and gentlemen, pledged $839,756. Which, by the way, that does not include my $250,000. So that's 1.89756. And what that means is to Operation Underground Railroad, to the former CIA, FBI, SEAL Team members, we will save 435 young girls from sexual slavery this year. Awesome. Make the sound of how that feels to make that difference. I can't wait to call them and tell them. My only request is I'm going to give your cards to Operation Railroad so they can follow up with you. When you get it, please respond right away so they're not chasing you down. I know how busy you all are, but 439 lives touched deeply. Give everybody another high five and hand. Now today, this morning, by the way, we're asking, I don't know if they're here yet. Have we turned on Facebook Live? Are we turning it on? We're going to do Facebook Live, so we'll have some people tuning in to get a chance to hear some of the speakers we have this morning. But what I'll tell you this morning, what I wanted to do was bring you a group of some of the best disruptors to industries that I know. It's one thing to start a business. It's another to step into where there's been businesses in an industry already established and turn it upside down. Really build something that adds more what? Than anybody else is adding in the marketplace. And that's how companies grow geometrically. So we have the founder of Skype, co-founder of Skype. That's right, the co-founder of Glossier, the founder of Glossier, the co-founder of Venmo, and the co-founder of Airbnb, all 4 joining us this morning. It's unbelievable. Let's have a hand for them to start with. And so we're going to start out. We're going to bring them up one at a time. I'm going to interview them a little bit. Then when they're all out here, we'll do Q&A with everybody. So think of specific questions that you want for each of them. Really great, diverse group of people. So let's start by first showing you a video, and then we'll bring out Jonas Kjellberg. But let's start with Jonas's experience.
My name is Jonas Kjellberg. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started a lot of companies. During the whole .com crazy area, I started my own first venture called Mobison, which was listed during a short time. started another company called Campus Mobile, sold that to Vodafone, learned the hard way of how important delight is for your product and not just sales. And after that, I jumped on a project that some of my former colleagues at Tele2, Niklas and Jonas, and they had started Skype, and I joined, and I ran that company. I think it's all about new businesses driven by new entrepreneurs, and I think you've had some tremendous successes here. And I think it's not the individual company that is important, it's basically people that were part of that success that leave with money in their pocket and actually start their own new businesses and try to replicate that formula and actually start that vibrant community of thinking in a different way.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up, give a giant welcome to Jonas Kjellberg, ladies and gentlemen. There's a man with energy. No, you didn't hear me. I said it's Jonas, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes. Please come on up here if you would, Jonas. Well, thank you for being here. This is exciting for me personally because I'm such a fan of you as an entrepreneur, because while you're known for Skype, you're just a serial entrepreneur that just keeps ripping it open every time. And anybody can get lucky maybe, and maybe get lucky enough to hit home run, but I don't know that luck's enough even for that. But to do it the number of times you've done, it's amazing. So you've, for other people that don't know, you've created Campus Mobile and you sold that to Vodafone. You did Player.io, I guess, a social sharing type of site, which you sold to Yahoo. He built iCloud and sold it to Apple, along with Skype, just this little thing on the side. So first, give him a hand for what he's accomplished. Just unbelievable. And I'd love to know, what is your secret sauce? How is it you're able to consistently find ways to produce companies that touch people around the world?
I don't know. I think I'm not afraid of losing, and I want to change the game of the industry. I think, I look at, industries and that make a lot of money, and I wake up that morning and say, how can I really fuck up their business big time? And, take out profits for them because, they're hierarchy, they do their things in a new way, and the customer maybe wants something different. Often I make a mistake and things go sideways. It's like Nanuba and Player.io, Kenetworks, all companies that went sideways. So if you ever have a company that goes sideways, call Yahoo, because with a bit of persuasion, they buy everything.
Well, hopefully they'll be around to still buy things the way they're
yeah, that's the problem, they can't buy anything in a couple of years, yeah.
Tell me the thinking that went behind Skype and how you guys came about making that happen.
Well, I think, I've just been part of my biggest failure in life. I was the CEO of a company called Lycos, and then another shitty little company showed up in Palo Alto called Google. That was a bummer. So that didn't work out. So I met some of my old friends, Niklas and Jonas. They just, also had another company called Kazaa that also went sideways. They had a technology which was a peer-to-peer sharing technology. So we started another company called Yoltid. No one really cared about that. So we pivoted it, and we started another company called Skyper, which was more of a mobile network on Wi-Fi. So we built this phone client so you could call. And it didn't really work out either. But after iterating and rethinking the business model and taking away, the cost, we actually got it moving. And we were just amazed when we sold it. We were still thinking, that Microsoft or AOL will come kill us tomorrow. Yeah.
And you sold it, wasn't 2003 is when Skype came out? Didn't you sell it in 2005 for like 2.6 billion?
2005, yeah.
2 years later, he sells it for 2.6 billion.
Yeah.
And
a lot of luck.
It was not bad for 2 years.
Right? A lot of luck.
And then it was bought by Microsoft later for over $8 billion.
Yeah. So eBay weren't too happy about the acquisition, so they sold it with a good premium a bit later.
Yeah, a bit of a premium. Not bad for them. So tell me, when you look at things, one of the things I saw in some of the interviews with you that I was fascinated by is that you have this philosophy of basically innovating in zeros.
Yeah.
Will you explain that to everybody?
Yeah, I don't
makes
know
so
if you
much
have a
sense.
whiteboard here, but I think one of the main things for you as an entrepreneur.
Someone's
and
talking.
just,
It's coming through on the speakerphone.
I think you are, amazing. But I think one of the key things for me is to really challenge the cost side, because in a lot of businesses there's a lot of cost, and it's not about making things free. It's basically taking away costs. I can give you an example. For Skype, a normal telco, they would invest in a lot of infrastructure. We thought, okay, how could you get the customer to pay for it? So we said, okay, you already paid for your internet, so we found our first zero. Second thing, a telco company, they needed a lot of switches. So we said, the interesting thing here is that the CPU power in these switches was actually the same as in your personal computer. So we said, why don't we let your personal computer code the calls? We found another zero, so we didn't have cost for that. Third thing is to do good quality for Skype. You need a lot of Cisco servers. I don't know, how many here actually use Skype? Wow, that's cool.
Virtually everyone in the room.
How many used Skype before Microsoft fucked up the product? That's a lot of people as well. So can you remember the time when you used your computer, you left it on, came back 3 hours later, and your computer was super hot, and the processor was going 100%? Can you remember it? Because if that's the case, your computer had just become a supernode, and all the traffic was routed through your computer. So we didn't have costs for the network, because we thought, there's a lot of computers connected to the internet, but not being used. So we thought, sharing is caring. There's a lot of government buildings out there. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, whatever, big companies, and we just used your computer at night and transported all the calls through. So we didn't have any network cost. Same thing with customer service. I knew running a telco, customer service could stand for, 20% of the costs. The challenge here is, my problem was, often when I talked to customer service, I was more pissed after I talked to them than before. So I came to the conclusion, there's a negative delta by having a customer service. So we said, let's make it impossible to call Skype. And we found another zero. There's a side effect as well, because, the tax authorities don't know where to call you either, but that's the second story.
I love the way you think. Now, you also do it the other way, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you can't cut zeros, then you try to figure out how to add zeros. Give us an example of that.
I think Apple has done it really, really well. Instead of just coming out with a new computer, a new phone, they think, okay, a normal computer is $300. How can we sell ours for $3,000? Because that comes back to the perspective of what's the delight.
Yes.
It's not about...
Yes, that's another key.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, it's basically, you need to build the best product in the world, and not just do it a little bit better, but really rethink what you wanted to do. What's that delight? What takes your product beyond competition? So you can actually go home tomorrow and add a zero to your price tag, and people will still love it and buy it. Basically, as you're doing as well. You're doing a good job there.
Thank you very much. So give me an example where you've done that with one of your companies.
I haven't really rocked that boat yet, but I'm still trying to do that.
You're more the cost side.
Yeah, well, I think Zalando, which is the equivalent of Zappos, we never lowered the price there, but we rethought, the whole cost structure again.
Okay, cool. Tell me, when you were building Skype, what were some of the biggest challenges you ran with early on, and how did you guys solve them?
We had no money. We couldn't mortgage our houses anymore. We were fighting the biggest telco industry in the world. I think we never thought we would ever get through. It's like we'll just get by another day and see where this takes us.
Wow.
So, and I think the challenge in Skype as well is a story that's very seldom told, is how do you get customers? Same thing there. We couldn't afford marketing. So we had no clue. So we needed to innovate in customer acquisition. So we thought, what happens if we do a small pop-up button after you've done a good call? And if you click that button, if you remember that, we went in, and since it was a downloadable client, we opened your inbox, and we sent a mail to every one of your contacts saying, hi, I just started using Skype. It's a great service. I would be happy to call for free with you. And we sent a lot of mails.
Wow. And the viral effect just must have been incredible.
Yeah. But do you think we
You
went...
had like didn't you have like 1 million users the first month?
Yeah, well, it took quite nearly 3 years to get 20,000 until we
Oh, 3 years to get 20,000.
Till we unlocked that. Because, again, do you think we went up on stage and told everyone about that? No, we told our product was viral and brilliant. We had an email engine in the bottom.
Wow.
And then it went so successful we actually had to cancel it. But that's just another story how you need to innovate in customer acquisition, because if you want growth, that's where you need to start. So basically taking away costs of your business, rethinking cost structure, innovating in zeros, and then basically thinking beyond of your product. Those are my 3 things.
Those are pretty great 3 things. Now, you also talk about this idea of friction-free storytelling. Will you share a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, today I work for the Boston Consulting Group, and I only have one question when I talk to the boards and CEOs, and it's a very simple question. It's basically, what are you selling? How often do you think I get a straight answer from these large...
Rarely, if ever.
Yeah, very rarely. It's like, well, you know, Mr. Kjellberg is very complicated. You know, we have 150,000 users and blah, blah, business units. But in the end, most successful companies have defined a friction-free storytelling, and they're very good at defining it. You know, I often use the story of Harley Davidson, and they struggled a bit until they decided what we sell is the ability for a 43-year-old accountant to dress in black leather, ride through small towns, and have people be afraid of him. It's not going from A to B. Motorcycles being an outlaw 30 minutes a weekend. That's what they're selling. And if you don't get that, it's very hard, because then most of the staff think you're selling motorcycles.
Yeah.
Same thing with H&M. You know, they defined and they invented the whole fashion industry by saying, you know, we're going to be a fashion company with a zero less on the price tag. You know, if Prada has stores in Fifth Avenue, so do we. If Gucci uses supermodels, so do we. And but we're going to have a zero less on the price tag. And then everybody gets it, because I think, you know, you talked about team earlier on. If your team doesn't know what you're selling, how should they know what to give to their customers? So it's a very simple perspective. So I would say, ask yourself, what are you selling?
What does failure mean to you?
I think I hate failures. Let's be honest about that. There's a lot of conferences. Everybody, oh, we're going to fail. I hate failure. I feel it happens to me all the time.
Yes.
But I like taking risks. And if you take risks, you end up in the wrong places. It's like any ball game. But if you don't take risks, you don't get anywhere. So for me, it's not the failure, because I hate it. It's painful of losing.
Yes.
But for me, it's the risk and encouraging of doing something no one has done before. Like being that game changer. That's stronger for me than being an outperformer on a day-to-day basis.
Interesting. So the innovation, the creativity, the putting something out there that no one else has.
Yeah, and trying that and trying to play with those different rules. Often I get it wrong, but that for me is not failure. And I think sometimes failure is defined by if we made a profit financially or not.
Yeah.
For me, it's more about taking a journey into the unknown, and I like doing that.
Yeah.
And then some of my friends came out, you pissed away a lot of money there, that went to hell. And I was quite happy with it. You know, my wife wasn't, and the community around, but I thought, I believed in this shit, but it didn't work, okay.
Back in those days when you had nothing, though, when you didn't have enough even, you know, you couldn't mortgage your house, the Skype days, you know, how did you get yourself to take those risks? Were you always a risk taker? Because many people, that's their concern, that's their fear.
I think, you know, you think too much. And I've always, you know, my mother was devastated when I went from a big corporate job. You know, you have kids, you can't do a startup again. But for me, you know, I have one life and I want to live it. And I want to do it with the people I enjoy working with. And for me, yeah.
What's your philosophy around marketing? You seem to activate the people who use your services. It seems to be a constant theme. But how do you look at marketing? What is marketing to you in the modern age, and how do you do it most effectively?
I think marketing, or I would call it customer acquisition, is innovating in customer acquisition is mostly one of the most important keys to drive success. And here's the thing, there's no books, there's no competition that is going to tell you how they are doing it, because it's often very easy to copy. It's like a combination of a lock.
Yes.
If you know it, it's great. If you don't, it's like super frustrating because you can't get the door open.
Yes.
So for me, innovating in customer acquisition and rethinking how you're doing that and taking a very, very mathematical approach on it. It's like 100 knock on the doors, 10 talks, 1 yes.
how can you multiply that, and understanding your funnel of engagement. And then you'll say, oh, but I'm business to business. It can't be done. Of course it can be done. You can just break it down, be super engineering about it, and understand how do you drive customers. And in a positive way, because I think a lot of people have taken marketing, taken hostage by bad marketing.
Yes.
Good marketing is when I meet passionate entrepreneurs, they're super proud to tell about their product. They're just confused that no one else is using their product. So I think that's good marketing. When you put a lot of passion in it and you have one good message. And then it's more, how do you do that over and over again so that your customers has a smiling face when they get a mail or a message from you?
That's beautiful. You become a wanted communicator as an unwanted communicator. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what's been a marketing challenge where you didn't solve it at first? You wrestled with it, you failed, and then you finally figured it out. Can you give us an example of that?
I think Skype is a very, very good example, because the problem here is it's a network effect. If everyone has Skype, it's great. You know, now everyone has it, so it's good. There's a problem is that when no one has it, it's an inverted effect.
Yes.
So you need to help that, you need to create your own luck. How do you get that done? And I think in that case, we found a way of working with email marketing, because we sent a mail from your inbox, and so people opened it, So,
yes.
And the service was great, and no one really got pissed, so, it worked out. We worked a lot with TV, but in many cases, I've not been able to unlock customer acquisition because I've fallen back to the traditional ways of doing marketing, and that becomes super expensive. You get caught in Google's financial trap. People out there in the world, they're often thinking about that there's one silver bullet that, if you can unlock, there is not. You need to have a lot of things going on, constantly measuring things.
So building a Parthenon as opposed to a single-leg stool or 2 or 3 ways of marketing.
Yeah. And if you do that, maybe you find 1 or 2 things that really drives customer acquisition. But for me, that is sometimes the hardest challenge to unlock customer acquisition for any business.
Do you always look at businesses in advance about their ability to scale? Where does scaling come in the tempo of your evaluation of a business opportunity?
Well, my business of that comes into these 3 things. First, of course, I need to feel that it's a great product and it can change the world. Second, I think I look at the cost side. If you haven't innovated in zeros, you don't have a cost advantage. The beauty with innovating in zeros is also that you can often scale exponentially, and you'll hear that from Airbnb, you hear it from Uber, Facebook, Google, because if you rethought your cost structure, you can grow much faster.
Right.
So that's super important, that element of competitive advantage, you can call it in the textbook. And then the third thing is basically how have you unlocked customer acquisition in a new, innovative way where the customers are happy with the messaging.
Tell me about iCloud. What was the concept for that originally? And did you originally design it to sell to somebody like Apple? Or were you originally designing as a company you'd keep?
No, of course we designed it to keep it. No one really believed in cloud computing and cloud storage at that point of time. I thought, this is the future. Why are you running around with a hard disk? This seems stupid. Now it's common, but at that point of time it wasn't. We started and built an operating system that you can actually use wherever you were. Good idea, but it only took really off in India and other places where people used an internet cafe. And then we moved, we got a lot of patents, and we were super happy about, going forward with it. And one day Apple called and said, like to buy you guys. And we're like, wow, we're on a good road here. And they're like, this is our checkbook. Pretty please with sugar on top. Could you give us the domain name? And can we take those patents? We want to redo things.
What did they pay for it? Is that public knowledge?
With Apple, they're like super confidential. But
plenty.
I couldn't tell you because that's going to cost me an enormous amount of money.
I understand. What's an industry? One final question, then we'll bring out the next people here. What industry is ripe for disruption now in your mind? What's an industry that maybe you're considering or you're looking at that you think could add value and disrupt the current paradigm?
I think food. The food industry, it's clearly run by some oligopolistic big players. So I think rethinking that perspective is going to be super important. I think healthcare, to some extent, is also broken.
I agree with that.
And then I'm playing around with, basically also how do you work with teams? You're working with whiteboards, and how do you work with your teams? I think that is a topic that came up, and I'm investing in that as well. How do you interact with human beings? Basically what you've been teaching, but how can you do that in a more efficient way? So those are my 3 big disrupts. But again, I'm often wrong, so don't.
No one's worried about that. If you were to give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur about the most important advice that was either given to you or the most important advice you would give today, what would it be?
Commitment. Get out of bed and, look yourself in the mirror and say, this is going to be the best day of my life. Put up on that smile and you go there and you try to change the world, because doing that every day will take you places.
Yes.
And to pivot. Don't stay too long with an existing idea. Bring your friends in, if the customers don't love it, there is a problem. Try to reconciliate, don't be afraid of moving your business beyond, because good business is constantly changing. That's so you don't get stuck with your idea. You spend 4 years, you drain all your cash, and you don't get there, and you see it as a failure. But constantly try to iterate it, move on. Because the beauty here is that by doing so, you get to places where you wouldn't be going, and there you can make other decisions that will maybe unlock other things that you haven't seen.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Let's have a hand for starters, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, man, I see you over there, so hypnotic. Thinking about what I do to that body. I get you like, ooh, baby, baby, ooh, baby, baby. Ooh, baby, baby, ooh, baby, baby.
So we're going to come back to Jonas. Jonas, by the way, said, could we stand the whole time? Because he's got so much energy and he's like me. So I got him to sit for the moment here. Thank you, Jonas. Our next speaker, let's watch their video and then we'll invite her up. It's Emily Weiss of Glossier. Here we go.
Emily Weiss left her day job at Vogue to launch Into the Gloss, the beauty website that's given readers a peek into the cabinets of actresses like Shailene Woodley and models like Gigi Hadid. And now Emily's business is growing even more with the launch of a beauty product line called Glossier.
Into the Gloss really started out for me as an exploration in meeting different kinds of women and listening to their desires when it comes to beauty, listening to what works and what doesn't work. Through the years of doing interviews with some of the most inspiring women in the world, from Isabel Marant to Ariana Huffington, I really got a sense for what women are looking for today, and I wanted to create that with Glossier. I love beauty, and I've always really loved products, but the landscape of beauty can be very, very overwhelming. And with Glossier, we were really trying to create really luxury, hardworking products, but at an accessible price point. What we're looking to do with Glossier is be the backbone to every woman's beauty routine.
What's something that you've learned over the course of running this company that you might have wished you knew at the beginning?
Just to be patient. Patience is something that comes with experience, and you can't really teach that. You have to kind of live through it.
Ladies and gentlemen, stand up and give a warm welcome to Emily Weiss. Let her hear you, it's Emily. Well, Emily, what a force of nature you are, my dear.
Oh, thank you.
Really a privilege to meet you and get a chance to visit with you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. The energy is incredible. Wow.
How you guys doing?
Amazing. Amazing.
Emily,
Wow.
you started out as a babysitter and had this vision of what you wanted to do, it sounded like, at a very early stage. And tell a little bit about how this started, and then also a little bit about your philosophy. I mean, so much of fashion is about making women feel like they're not enough, so they'll buy a product. And even as a male, it's always disgusted me what it does to women. You see women beat themselves up so much who are beautiful. But, you know, the society and the culture and the conditioning of advertising is so different. You've taken a totally different approach. So maybe let's just start with a little history, if you would. How'd this all start out for you?
Yeah, of course. So I think for me, it all comes down with the business today and how I've gotten here to a real belief in people. I think people underestimate themselves, what they're capable of, and I think everyone is so uniquely beautiful. both internally and externally. And that love of people and that belief in people and wanting to really bring people together has always been something that I've been super passionate about. So, beauty I see as this incredible connective tissue. Everyone's got a story when it comes to beauty. Some, crazy experiment that you did when you were in your teenage years, or something, some bad haircut you had, or some amazing product that you swear by, whether you're a man or a woman. I think everyone has so much to say. And so I think of beauty really as this conduit to bring people together. And that's why I started Into the Gloss, the blog, and why I started the beauty company Glossier today, is to help people realize their inherent power and really share that through sharing opinions and ideas with others.
And you do that so congruently. Everybody talks like you talk, positioning. But you live it, and you lived it enough that people feel the difference, and you've built this gigantic following. Tell us a little bit about the journey itself, though, how it started out. If you would share a little bit of the story of, going to work with Ralph Lauren and then your blog, and
so
how did it blow up?
Of course. So you said I started as a babysitter. I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone. We've all babysat. But I always believe that you don't get what you don't ask for. And when I was babysitting for a neighbor, it so happened that he worked at Ralph Lauren in New York. I'm from Connecticut, so it was about an hour away on the train. Is that Connecticut? Yeah, hello. And so I said, I love your kids, but I really want to work at Ralph Lauren. And how can I do that? So I did get an internship when I was really young. I was like 15 or 16, and I was taking the train, commuting from Connecticut for 2 summers, an hour each way with mostly dads at the time, which I hope has changed. I think is changing. And I interned, and I've always just believed in the power of hard work and in asking. What's the worst that can happen? And from just asking, I wound up getting that internship, which led to a career in my early 20s in magazines like Vogue and W Magazine and Teen Vogue as an assistant. And I launched the blog out of my apartment with $700 and a lot of early mornings, 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. working on the blog, and then I would
go... In other words, I want to point that out. You did that before you went to work.
Yep.
Because people always ask, when do I work on my new business?
Exactly.
And I just tell people, the other 10 hours you're not working when you get home.
Exactly.
From 5 to
So from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I would teach myself how to use the digital camera to take pictures for the blog. I would edit interviews. I would transcribe things, and Into the Gloss launched about a month after I had the idea, and now today has millions of unique visitors from around the world, and is really the crown jewel of Glossier Inc., the company that started 3 years ago.
Now, when you began to do that blog, you're working for these firms. At what point did you get the insights that allowed you to say, I want to bring products to the table? Not only want, but became committed to doing so.
Yeah,
and what did you see different or hear different?
So I think going back to your original question, I think what I realized in interviewing, hundreds of women from around the world. I mean, every big, celebrity from Kim Kardashian to Selena Gomez to, a really cool girl with great style who works at the coffee shop down the street. And I wanted to know, what lipstick is that? So many kinds of women, different ages, different backgrounds from all walks of life. What I started to realize is really what you mentioned at the beginning, that many of us have grown up in this society where a handful of really big players in the beauty industry, and this is a $250 billion global market. The beauty industry is huge. So many of these big players have really controlled the message for far too long, through advertising, through brand-appointed spokespeople, through their retail outlets. They've controlled really how women think about themselves and how they think about beauty, and it hasn't been necessarily a great message. It's been a lot about, hey, this is wrong, hey, that thing you thought was cool, it actually isn't, it's wrong. And I think that's led to people feeling really disempowered. And so having learned so much from actually just listening to these women I was interviewing, really sitting with them and listening in their bathrooms with their products, going through their medicine cabinets and listening to their experience of dealing with product and their identity, realized that there had to be a better way. There had to be a way, given that we're in the age of social media, where every single person in this audience has their own voice and their own opinion through platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We all have so much power to influence. So much power to influence those who follow you, whether that's 5, 50, 500, 5 million followers, you all have a voice. And I wanted to create this beauty company that was based on that, was saying, hey, let's all create this together. Let's create products by listening to women, as crazy as that sounds. And yeah.
Speaking of listening to women, what is today? You mentioned earlier too.
Yes. So that was what led to Glossier. It's the first beauty lifestyle brand. We've got hundreds of thousands of customers from around the world. We're based in New York City, right in Soho, with an 80% female workforce. And I believe that, if I can do it, really anyone here can do it. I did not get an MBA. I did not go to business school. I, to this day, kind of suck at math. But I do one thing well, and I think the one thing is really caring about people and caring about the mission and always going back to that why.
I read some stories, and how accurate they are, that you went through, I think you had to go through 11 different VCs to try to get funding, and that you weren't really clear about what you wanted to do yet. But if I heard correctly, one of those individuals just connected with your passion, and even though you didn't have all your ducks in a row, that person decided to be in business with you. Can you tell us a little bit about, how'd you keep yourself going? It sounds like it's kind of built into your DNA a little bit, just to keep going, keep asking.
Yeah.
But how did you keep asking, and tell us a little bit about how you funded the company initially.
Sure. So, when you're starting a blog, it's quite easy to start a blog. We can all do it. It's quite easy to start an Instagram account, thankfully. Starting a physical product line and manufacturing, incredible products that are going to still be around decades from now to millions of people does take more capital. And I figured out that it was going to take about $1 million to launch Glossier back in 2014. And I took this idea and this audience that we had from Into the Gloss, and I went on a little bit of a roadshow to meet a bunch of venture capitalists. And of course, I had no idea what a venture capitalist was, but I was told that's who, would potentially fund my business. And got a lot of no's. I mean, I think one of the reasons was pattern recognition. Most of the people at these firms were men. Who would say, oh, I'm going to bring this, concept or product to my wife. I'll have her try it. And I'd say, well, no. I mean, your job as an investor is to learn about the, companies and the industries and the market sizes and the opportunities that you're investing in. If I were a, investor and you came to me with a financial technology company, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to give this to my husband. I would learn about financial technology and I would make an educated decision.
How old were you when you were lecturing these VCs? Just out of curiosity, I love this.
How long was I what?
How old were you when you were lecturing these VCs?
I was 26, I want to say. Yeah, I was 26 or 27.
Awesome.
I'm 32 now. It's a huge market. I mean, this is a fantastic business. That's not why I do it, but it's a fantastic business. And the one VC that really connected with me was Kirsten Green from Forerunner Ventures. She's behind companies like Warby Parker, Jet.com, Bonobos, Dollar Shave Club. Two of those had billion-plus exits in the last year, and she's one of the foremost female venture capitalists in the world. And Kirsten's really connected with Glossier, and she will tell you, and I would tell all of you, when you're starting something out, it really is about that founder connection and that belief in a person. And there is a certain blend of art and science to what bets you make on people. Yes. And you all have to be just as inquisitive and critical of who you work with and who you take on or who you do a deal with as they are of you. Yes. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work with Kirsten and raise an initial round of $2 million. And today we've raised over $40 million.
Wow. Tell us, just give her a hand, please.
Yeah.
Give her a big hand.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you marketed this initially. Obviously, the blog opened the doors and so forth, but your philosophy around marketing, how you used Instagram. Give us a little feedback, if you would, about that.
Sure. So we actually launched Glossier on Instagram, which was pretty unheard of, 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So what that means is we started an account at Glossier for free on Instagram, which I think is a great marketing channel. I think it's the best one for consumer products today. And we just started to kind of build the brand in real time through Instagram posts. So from our journey of developing our original formulas to moving into our new office to how we designed our logo, I mean, all the sort of steps that that went into the company, we started populating this Instagram account with content for about a month before we launched the website.
Did you involve them in the design of those products at all?
Today, a little bit, but we...
At the beginning, you made the decision.
Yeah, we really, with beauty products, I mean, you really have to work on that product market fit right away. I mean, if you think, a lot of you might be familiar with Clinique Dramatically Different Moisturizer. It's, $300 million are made every year on one product that was invented in 1962. So it's with beauty products, you gotta nail it. You can't be, launching things that burn people's faces off and saying, oh, we'll do better next time. So yeah, we launched an Instagram, and it's still today our biggest. We have we're the second highest engaged with brand on Instagram in the fashion and beauty category on the platform.
Wow!
Yeah,
congratulations.
so we went from an initial about 15,000 followers at launch to today around 1 million followers with twice as high engagement rate as most of the other brands.
Tell me a little bit about your evolution from. I mean, you've built yourself. You're truly a self-made woman in every shape of the word. It's beautiful to see what you've done. But how have you evolved through time as, as a manager, as a CEO, as the owner of the company? How is that?
Yeah.
What have you seen in yourself? What have you dealt with in yourself to grow to where you are today?
I've gotten my butt kicked. I mean, it is, you just don't know how to be a CEO unless you are your own CEO, and I think the number one enemy of a CEO is themselves, period. Like, managing your own psychology is the hardest job when you own your own business. I'm sure a lot of you guys can understand that. So for me, I know what I don't know. I'm constantly trying to stay curious, constantly reading, books. One of my favorite books is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. Great book about, getting through tough times in business. And I just try and stay really humble and really surround myself with people who are way smarter than me. One of my first hires at Glossier was a COO and president who has a banking background, business school background, totally different. And I say it, a great business partner is like a great Venn diagram where, you've got two people with two distinct skill sets who overlap, and whatever that middle part is that you really need to both understand. Yeah. And so that was really key for me in my evolution as a leader.
What do you want women to experience from the use of your products?
I really want them to experience their own power. So I take issue with the word empowerment because it's not up to someone else to give you power. It's really helping women understand that they already have that voice. And, in large part, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think in large part, really, I'm grateful to social media. I'm hugely grateful to the democratization of media that has happened through, platforms like Instagram, platforms like Facebook, where everyone really can choose not only who they elect into office through, storytelling, but really, what brands they elect, what people they want to elect. I mean, I really appreciate the voice of the individual.
What's the next chokehold or obstacle for you to blow through to take your business to the next level?
I think probably the thing that keeps me up at night the most is hiring and scaling people. So, I mean, and you guys know as much as anyone that, one bad hire or someone who comes into your company who's got a bad vibe or doesn't really share your values can really derail a great operation or great promise. And so for us, we're about 150 employees in 3 different countries, and trying to figure out as a first-time entrepreneur how to scale that culture of inclusivity, of thoughtfulness, of creativity and innovation that we've really pioneered in the beauty industry across, getting up to 1,000+ employees and really being this beauty company of the future is something that is daunting.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here while women are marching in the streets, because you're the embodiment of what I think most women are looking to be. You really are.
Thank you.
Today, to acknowledge today is another Women's March, correct?
Yes, yeah. So there's hundreds of thousands of women and, all over the place, LA, DC, everywhere. And
What's the focus of this march?
I believe it's electing more women into office, into public office, and
beautiful.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really
So if I weren't, I'm thrilled to be here, and if I weren't here, I'd probably be marching in one of those cities.
Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
you're marching with us here. Let's
Yes.
have a big hand
Thank
for
you.
Emily here.
Thank you so much.
Give it up for Emily. You've been sitting for a little bit. Turn, get a quick massage for 2 minutes. Wake up the person next to you real quick. 2 minutes while I grab our next two. Good night.
Yes, I can see you. 'Cause every girl here wanna be you. Oh, she's a diva. I feel the same and I wanna meet her. They say she low down.
Switch!
Leave 'em. They say she needs to slow down. The baddest thing around town. She's nothing like a girl you've ever seen before. Nothing you can compare to your neighborhood. Oh, I'm trying to find the words to describe this girl without being disrespectful. The way that booty moving, I can't take no more. Had to stop what I'm doing so I can pull her close. I'm trying to find the words to describe this girl without being disrespectful. Damn girl, damn, you's a sexy bitch, a sexy bitch. Damn, you's a sexy bitch. Damn girl, damn, you's a sexy bitch, a sexy bitch. Damn, you's a sexy bitch. Damn girl.
Each person decide who's A and who's person B. Decide who's A, who's B. A, wake up B by dancing as crazy as you can. B, mirror them. Here we go.
I will love you tonight. Give me everything tonight. For all we know, we might not get tomorrow. Let's do it tonight. Let's do it tonight. Grab somebody sexy, tell them, hey, give me everything tonight. Give me everything tonight. Give me everything tonight.
Shake the building on 3. 1, 2, 3, go! Let me hear you! Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at the screen. Venmo with Iqram Magdon-Ismail.
One of the fastest growing apps in the world, processing billions of dollars.
If you've ever had to split a bill, pay back someone for tickets, or been short on cash, there's a wildly popular app for that.
Sending money to friends and family just got a whole lot easier.
Venmo me.
Quick and simple, just Venmo me.
Hey, can you Venmo me for that pizza? Who here at this table uses Venmo? Raise your hand.
We're going to a show, or we're going on a trip with friends, or we're buying a gift together, and I got to pay you back. I'd rather just pay for it with Venmo.
My name is Iqram Magdon-Ismail. I was the founder and for a period of time the CEO of Venmo. What if we could just pay each other with our Blackberries? And that was kind of the aha moment that got us to actually take the idea from a thought to something that we would build. So we decided to kind of whip together a version of Venmo that would work for us over text message. You'd link your credit card to your phone, and it would take money from my account and put it in his account. We pitched Venmo to hundreds of people, and only one real institutional investor said yes. And sometimes it's, even though it was just one, it was like the perfect one. I look at how things happened with Venmo, and sometimes, you can't control all of your circumstances. But what you can do is, and as I tell myself all the time, is just kind of follow your instinct and your gut. That's advice I give myself almost every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Iqram, the founder of Venmo. Give a hand. Glad to see we got another low-energy CEO founder here. How are you?
I'm excited.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Tell us the history of this. I mean, you started out, I guess, with you and your roommate. You started out with a different business. You also iterated. Tell us a little bit about what your original business was and how did you iterate and what made it take off?
Yeah, so I had the fortune of being paired with Andrew Cortina, my first roommate in college, and we got to know each other there. So that's how we became friends. And when we were, in college, we started thinking, like, what are we going to do once we graduate?
Good question to ask.
and a lot of our friends
After a lot of partying, was this, or prior to that?
Yeah, a couple cocktails here or there. And a lot of our friends were following routes that we weren't really interested in. So some were becoming investment bankers, some were doing tech gigs at companies like Facebook, Google. And for some reason, it wasn't calling us. And it was difficult then to be among a group of people in school, all doing one thing, and for us to kind of say, like, we got to stay true to ourselves here. Let's not chase something that we're really not passionate about. So it really ended up being me and Cortina at the end of 4 years, looking at each other saying, what are we going to do? Because everyone else has a job. And so we graduated, and what we started doing was let's find ways for us to make ends meet while we figure out what we're really passionate about. Yeah. Because we weren't ready to join an investment bank or a tech company as an engineer. I was an engineer by trade, and he was a philosophy student. So we went around door to door in Philadelphia, knocking at restaurants, and we said to restaurant owners, can we make you a website for free food? Because that was one of our necessities. Or, $200. And that's how we started paying our rent month to month. We were literally living paycheck to paycheck. And eventually we were like, okay, no one wants to give us free food, and it's really, really tough to convince a website to spend $200 on a website. So we got to find something else. And that led to the next thing. And it was Cortina and I just getting to know each other in different capacities. And eventually, fast forward 5 years, after the two of us had started a few companies together, some that didn't pan out, some that did, we ended up living apart. I was in Philadelphia, he was in New York City. And one weekend, I left my apartment, and I got on a Bolt bus, and I was late as usual. So I ran out the door without my wallet. But, and I'm sure we all do this, we have our phones attached to us all the time. So I had a BlackBerry at the time, and so did Cortina. Somehow I kept my wallet. I left my wallet in the apartment, ran out, caught the bus, but I had my phone. And then I'm thinking, like, oh man, Cortina's gonna have to cover the entire weekend in New York City, which is not cheap. But I was like, I knew he would be slightly frustrated by this because I tend to be forgetful sometimes. I get to New York, and I didn't tell him, I didn't text him on the way saying, hey, by the way, you're going to have to cover my bill. I got there, and I was like, hey, Cortina.
You waited for a personal presentation about that.
Hey, Cortina, look, I left my wallet in Philly. You mind covering me? And he was already in credit card debt. And he's like, all right, now I got to take Iqram for the weekend. Fine. We were good friends, so it was all good. And, we went out Friday night. We went out Saturday night. And I'm standing there, not paying for anything, and Cortina's just swiping his card and kind of giving me this quirky grin every time he would swipe. And I'm thinking, man, this is a little awkward, but he's my best friend, so we're cool. But I think everyone has a limit. So Sunday comes along, and it's like now I'm about to catch I'm about to catch my bus back home, and it's like that final bill, and the question has yet to come. He's like, "So Iqram, when are you going to pay me back?" I know that's what's going on in the back of his head. And look, normally, and even nowadays when we hang out, since we are fortunate enough to take care of each other from time to time, we're not that pressed for it. But at the time, we were 27 years old, and we'd been working startups all our life. So his tension was not towards me; it was and really he wanted to be able to cover me because we were good friends. His tension was, I just need my money.
Yeah.
So then the bill came, and there was this kind of awkward silence between the two of us. The waiter puts the check down on the table, and I look at Cortina. He knows what I'm thinking, and he's like, he pulls the credit card out, puts it down, and I'm like, thanks, man. And we hand it to the waiter. Waiter comes back, and we have this tense, amazing silence. Sometimes in these tense situations come the best of ideas, or the best of outcomes. And we both, as soon as the check came back to the table, Cortina and I looked at each other and said, "Oh, what if I could have just sent you the money for this restaurant bill with my BlackBerry?" And that was it. And we kind of said it at the exact same time. And then we extended it further, and we said, wait, if we could send each other money, what if we could use our phones to pay back the restaurant? And now we don't have to take our wallet wherever we go. And that was the moment Venmo was born for us. It was a need that the two of us had. There was a little bit of tension, and we were kind of anxious, which was pushing us to find a solution that would keep us together as friends. And we're going to remain friends to the grave, but it was like there was a moment there, and we brought Venmo out of it. So that's how it started.
Pretty amazing. Tell me, give a hand for that for stars, for sure. What the social aspect of Venmo? Tell me how that evolved, because is that more? There's many ways to transfer money, but there's Google and Xerox and Facebook. There are certain people like Google it, Venmo, like just Venmo me has become the phrase, especially amongst millennials. Tell me a little bit. I want to know both about the name out of curiosity, but first I want to hear about the social side, because as a non-millennial, to me, it's like horrifying to think someone's going to publish all their financial components and share it, and yet for a different generation, it's a very different experience. Tell me about the social, how you came across it, and is it really the glue that separates you? Tell me what your personal views of that.
He just teed me up for a hole-in-one.
Good.
So there's a man back there, Matt DiPasquale, okay, and one of the things I have to say is, when we were starting Venmo, had no idea of what was taking place here. The energy, the
That's right.
So we actually leveraged that principle, success leaves clues, and it allowed us to have a conversation around what are the popular apps today doing that are causing a new kind of social dynamic. And we started looking at things like, so instead of looking at apps like PayPal or Bank of America or Chase or QuickPay, we were looking at apps that our friends were using. So Instagram. Oh, sorry, not Instagram. Instagram wasn't even around. But Facebook,
Yes.
Twitter.
Yes.
Those were the apps that we were studying. And we were saying to ourselves, like, what's the difference between sharing something on Venmo and sharing something on Twitter or Facebook? The only real difference is when you post something on Facebook, you don't include a dollar amount. Okay, so let's learn from that. What if we made it so that when you made a payment on Venmo, you don't share the dollar amount, but you could leave a quirky, fun little note about what you did, because you're using Venmo when you're out with your friends anyway, and this is a way to catalog a memory that you can look back on in life. The other day, there was a record producer talking to me about how they made this hit, this Billboard Top 10 called Caroline, and he was telling me a story about how he would go back to his Venmo feed as they were, looking at things, like as they were buying things to get the song up and running. So the microphone, they look back and they say, this is when we bought the microphone, and this is what we said at the time.
Wow, history.
The In-N-Out burger, that's where they were eating, and you get this record of your life, and it's very much like Twitter or Facebook, except we don't share the dollar amount. So.
And how long did it take before it took off? Give us a little bit of the history from the time you began, how long before it really took off, and tell us where the name come from. Was it designed specifically for a purpose?
So the name is a combination of vendor mobile, Venmo.
Okay.
And initially we had this idea, we had the notion of, food trucks and places could also accept Venmo.
Yes.
So that's how we got the name. It was available on GoDaddy for $9 a year. So that was we were grateful for that. It's one of those lucky moments. And then how long did it take to take off? I think it still has a long way to go, but it took about 3 years of arduous work for it to finally get to the point where the people that I was introducing Venmo to were like, okay, this makes sense and it fits into my life, or they were already in a place where they were using it with friends. Right. But those the first year was me pulling out my credit card when I was at dinner with friends and forcing them to pay me back with Venmo. And I almost guilt-tripped. I would guilt-trip them. I'd say, look, if you don't pay me back with Venmo, don't pay me back. And they'd look at me and they're like, all right, Iqram,
forced clients.
You're going to do this again? And I'm racking up, mounds of debt with Chase. Thank you, Chase. And so the first year was a lot of that, and I mean there was a lot of okay, you and Cortina, you guys are going to get our credit card information, our bank account, and
that was my next question. At that stage, it's different today. How did you get over the trust factor of giving you that kind of information?
This was another value point of making it so that people could share their payments with each other. We realized early on as a startup it was going to be very difficult for us to compete with the level of security that someone like Chase or Bank of America offered.
Yes.
They have compliance teams. They have lots of diligence going on with every customer that gets onboarded. For us, we were like, well, if we can show you other people that using Venmo, then you're more likely to trust it without us having to have full compliance in place. Right. So when you open the app and you see a feed of your friends using Venmo, and you're like, hey, find your friends. These are the people that you could use Venmo with when you go out and about. You're like, oh, yeah, you know what? If Joe is using Venmo and Joe's my friend, I guess he trusts it. I trust it too.
Interesting. Wow. What a great spiraling effect for something that would be very difficult normally.
Yeah, that played a big role, I would say, looking back.
You sold the company for $26 million, stayed on board from what I understood, and then it was sold later to Braintree, I think, for $800 million. Tell me, you stayed on for what period? What made you decide to sell? Tell us a little bit about that, because that's a tough thing for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And how many years into it was it?
Okay, so our first acquisition with Braintree was about 3.5 years into us having the first version of Venmo, and that was.
How big were you at that time? Like how much were you? How many members did you have and so forth?
So we had 5,000 active users and 25,000 users, which is, to me, the fact that Braintree came in and took us on is I'm forever grateful for. But the story goes like this, and it was probably one of the darkest times that I've ever encountered and Venmo encountered, because when we were 3 months before Venmo was 3 months before Venmo got acquired by Braintree, we realized that we were spending exponentially compared to any sort of revenue that we were creating. So we actually didn't make any money from day one, because we still today offer Venmo as a free service. So when you pay your friends back, it's free. And early on, we were incurring a 3% credit card fee per transaction. So when
you're giving it for free, but you were being charged to give the service.
Yeah, and it got to the point where we had raised $5 million, and we were set out to spend in 1 year $35 million. Now think about that. Now that's one of those you don't do it again, but glad we did it then.
Explain that math to us. How you kept going? I want to know that.
We were naive. And sometimes that works to your advantage, because the reason a lot of people weren't getting into payments is because it's so expensive. But we were two guys that just needed a way to pay each other back, and that's all we cared about. And that as long as our friends were paying us back, we were paying them back. We weren't really worried about the other details. But lo and behold, now we're growing from a basement startup to. We have a board of directors. We've raised our first round of funding, and we're starting to learn about financial planning. We were very much learn as we grow.
Yes.
We start looking at the numbers, and there was a 2-month period where all of a sudden Venmo, the amount of volume that was flowing through Venmo started increasing exponentially, and we only caught it 6 months after we had raised our Series A round of financing.
Yes.
And I remember very vividly being in a board meeting with me, Cortina, and 3 other people, Samir Gandhi from Excel, and Ian Sigalo, and Eric Weiss from RRE. And we said, look, we really need you to re-up your investment, because we think Venmo is still going to be a big smash, but unfortunately we have some cost structures to fix. Now, I've learned the second time around how to back that up, because the first time we were a little nervous. We didn't really know we could fix it. And our investors were viewing us as a seed stage investment. They just wanted to see, look, can these guys take it from this phase to the next? And the next phase for us was, we need $100 million to continue growing a 5,000 member company, to the next PayPal. And that story, if you imagine us telling that story then, 6 months after raising our first $5 million, we weren't that convincing, because they were like, well, how did you not see this in the first place? Well, we erupted, we didn't know. So none of our investors were willing to participate in our next round. That said, we were all trying to figure it out together. It was more like, hey, can we find another solution? And in this period, Cortina and I were having conversations like, okay, we're not going to be able to make next month's payroll. So we started talking to our employees about what it would take for us to wind Venmo down. Him and I were thinking about possible things we could do to keep it around if it was just the two of us running it, because we really, really didn't want to let go of Venmo. And one of the things that was really nice about Venmo is the entire team, no matter how much money we were making or how much we had to gain, the entire team was very passionate about the product, because we put our blood, sweat, and tears into making that product an experience that people would love. And 2 weeks before, so I had a meeting like this in front of not this many people, but 25 people, and I sat down and I said, it must be much tougher with this many. And I sat down and I said, look, thank you for all your hard work, but it seems like we're not able to garner any more investment to continue running Venmo. As you know, it's very expensive, and we made a few mistakes in terms of our cost structure that we had to fix. And hopefully we all learned something together. Let's take all this energy and build something great next time around. That was the conversation we had, and now everyone at the company is, looking for another job, or we're trying to help people figure out what comes next. And by the grace of Spirit, God, whatever, good energy and positive vibes, this guy, Bill Reddy, called us up and said, and it was an introduction from one of our board members, Samir Gandhi, and said, hey, what are you guys up to with this Venmo thing? And he was the CEO of a very profitable company called Braintree that was not a consumer-facing product. It was a B2B product. And he was looking for a young consumer team to come and spice things up a little bit for them. And he called us up and he said, hey, we really like what you're doing with Venmo. Can we fly you out to talk about it? And we didn't really know then that this was would lead to any sort of acquisition. And this is something that I remind myself, of every day. You never know what sign you're going to get. But if you feel something and it feels great, follow it. The way Bill talked to us was he was very passionate about what we were doing. We talked to Groupon. Groupon offered Venmo $3 million, and we'd raised $5 million. Facebook interviewed our entire team, decided to pass. MasterCard was interested, but there was going to be a year-long diligence. And we're like, a year? And Bill Reddy flew us into Chicago. We were in a room with 6 or 7 people, and in the middle of it, Bill said, we were talking about, can we partner with you? Can you fund us for another 6 months while we, figure out this cost structure? You can own a piece of Venmo, and then let's make a partnership. And Bill goes, well, what if we just did an acquisition? And I was the one that answered that, and I said, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, when you're 2 weeks to closing your doors.
Yeah, baby. And he said, how much? I said $26.6 million. That was it. And he said, I'm in.
Wow.
And that's how it went down. I hope Bill's watching. Thank you, man. And we're brothers now. And it's like that. The purest. I mean, just for an idea, every investor that we pitched Venmo to said no, but one said yes, and we kept pitching. For me, one of the things that I studied in school was theater, and what you learn when you're in theater class is how to accept criticism, and if you can accept criticism, you can build upon that. So all the no's that investors were giving us were just our ways of refining the pitch so that we could eventually find that one yes. It was practice. And then the person that said yes is the one that introduced us to Bill Reddy, who's the one that said yes again. And he was the only person that was interested in acquiring Venmo that said yes. But we would fight for those yeses, and when we got them, we took them. So.
And you learned when they said no, you looked at why, it sounds like, to dig underneath.
Yeah, what's missing from the story here?
Yes.
And then you go back to the drawing board. You figure out how to reshape the story, and you keep, there are 8 billion people.
Wow. And so for you now, I'm sorry for my ignorance, are you still involved with the company? It's been sold? You were involved during the days that it was still part of Braintree, is that correct?
I'm not officially involved. Every now and then I get a text from the product team saying, what do you think of the new Venmo mission? And I say, talk to my agent. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But, what I'm doing now is I'm a cheerleader. I hope Venmo is here as long as I'm and
beautiful.
Beyond. So
that's beautiful. Let's have a big hand for Iqram. Very nice.
If we lost our minds and we took it way too far, I know we'd be alright. I know we would be alright if you were by my side. We stumbled in the dark. I know we'd be alright. We would be alright. Oh, I've been shaking. I love it when you go crazy. You take all my inhibitions. Baby, there's nothing holding me back. You take me places that tear up my reputation, manipulate my decisions. Baby, there's nothing holding me back. There's nothing holding me back.
last but far from least, Airbnb with Joe Gebbia. Let's take a look at a video first.
Where Airbnb is headed is directly related to where it all started. We hosted our guests and got to provide hospitality to them, right? We got to care for them. The second thing that happened is they got to belong in San Francisco. None of them had really ever visited the city before, but because of our suggestions and recommendations, they got to go from feeling like outsiders to feeling like insiders. And the third thing that happened is we became economically empowered.
$1 billion in net revenue. What do we take away from that?
I think it shows that this company is really growing. So that's $1 billion in net revenue for this past third quarter. Last year, the net revenue for that same quarter was about $500 million.
Within months, as word spread in their San Francisco neighborhood, the business exploded. And the rest is Silicon Valley history.
For any entrepreneur out there, like, you can't take no for an answer. You know, we had really smart, credible people telling us no. And had we listened to them, there might not be Airbnb today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up. Warm welcome to my dear friend, Joe Gebbia. Let him hear you, Joe, ladies and gentlemen. Make it move.
Won't you follow me into the jungle?
Well, what a panel, and to have a chance to have you back is really wonderful, Joe. Great to see you.
It's really my pleasure, Tony.
Thank you, man. Listen, you know, obviously I know because we're friends, but let's take you back because everyone knows the success and the extraordinary impact of Airbnb worldwide at this stage, but I don't think most people have a clue how much of a struggle it was in the beginning. It includes selling cereal and using credit cards. Tell us a little bit of that early history, where this concept came from, and it didn't take off right away. People seem to think it did. So can you give a little of that history for us?
Sure. I mean, Airbnb was born probably like all the ideas here on stage, a lot of the ideas here in the audience, of just solving a problem for yourself. And it was 10 years ago, actually, that my roommate and I quit our jobs to be entrepreneurs. We had no idea what we wanted to work on.
10 years ago, that's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling, think about it. We just knew we wanted to work on a big idea. We had no idea what it would be. And so all this optimism and enthusiasm quickly went away when I get a letter from the landlord. It says, "Dear Joe, your rent is going up 25%. And the fear of God set in. We ran to our online bank accounts. We had a math problem. The rent went like this. Our bank accounts went like this. And we said, oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
So we had to scramble. We had to think of a way to solve this problem.
How many roommates at the time?
It was my roommate, Brian.
Yeah,
He's
Brian.
now our CEO. And so it turned out that I'm on my laptop in the living room one day, and there's a design conference coming to San Francisco, and it says all the hotels are sold out on the conference website. And I look up over the top of the laptop screen, and I see all of this empty space in our living room. And I think to myself, I have this airbed in the closet. What if we inflated it on the floor, hosted guests for the design conference? They could have a place to stay last minute, and we could help make ends meet through making a rent check. So I email Brian. He's like, I love it. We actually go to the store. We get 2 more airbeds. So we got this palatial setup of 3 airbeds in our living room. We make a website called Airbed and Breakfast, and we advertise pictures of ourselves, pictures of the 3 airbeds. We would cook breakfast for our guests in the morning, pick them up from the airport. We'd make T-shirts for them, give them a map to San Francisco. It was a whole package of really thinking, how do we design a whole experience for people, even from the very beginning? So we did this for one weekend. We hosted 3 guests. We made over $1,000, which saved our apartment, which is incredible.
Right.
But really the magic was in meeting them. It was this idea of sharing our city with these 3 people who arrived as strangers and left as friends. And we didn't actually think that this was the idea. So the weekend happened, and the gears began to turn, but very slowly. So it wasn't until about 3 months later that Brian and I said, well, we haven't come up with anything else yet. What about that thing where we hosted those people in those airbeds? We're kind of like two normal guys. We're willing to bet there's enough other people in the world who would want to share their homes with others as well. So we're just designers. We knew we needed an engineer to bring on the team. My previous roommate, Nate, we called him up. He loved the idea, and we had our founding team.
Wow.
So
that's wild. Let's have a hand for that for starters. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. I wish I could say that everything else was just
smooth.
Took off from there. It couldn't be further from the truth. And when people look at the company and they say, oh my God, an overnight success, I cringe, because if any entrepreneur looks at our company and thinks that, we just built it and they came, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And
so tell us the next iteration then. I mean, you had
the
some
next
rough
one
times.
we launched for South by Southwest in 2008, because that was where you went to launch your tech company. Foursquare and Twitter and all the others had these glory days of launching and just taking off like rockets. So we launched at South by Southwest 10 years ago, 2008, and we have all of this enthusiasm. We have this new shiny product, the second version, and we have a total of 5 hosts sign up and 2 reservations. And one of those was us.
No.
This was a miserable failure by every metric that you could think of. We barely got even one mention on one blog. And so now it's back to the drawing table again. And we end up launching a third time later that summer for the Democratic National Convention.
Yes.
Now, if you remember, 10 years ago, Barack Obama, John McCain, this is taking over every headline you could imagine around the world. And we thought, interesting, in Denver, there's a housing crisis. There's 100,000 people going to see President-elect Obama speak, and there's 20,000 hotel rooms. Maybe we can ride the coattails of this press and actually get some awareness for this marketplace. So we did exactly that. And we got coverage from here to Paris. It was incredible. Everybody wanted to tell the story about how the residents of Denver were opening up their homes to take in Obama supporters to solve this housing problem. And so we literally went from nothing to like a weekend sensation. We had a few hundred people actually using our service. So our PayPal account went from 0 to $30,000 overnight. And it set off every fraud filter inside PayPal, and they shut it down, which was really scary because we had to pay our hosts, but we couldn't access the money. And so hosts were getting really upset at us, like, where's my money? So it was like a little precarious situation. Now, there's a graph of when you start a company that I feel like everybody's probably gone through on stage, and if you started a company audience. It's called the process, is the name of the graph. And sort of you're in the building phase, there's no traffic, there's no growth. Then you have the launch of initiation. And suddenly you go from 0 awareness to some kind of hopefully really exciting awareness. And your numbers are going up and you're like, it's happening. We built it and they came. However, there's a phase called the wearing off of novelty.
Yes.
Where people look for the next exciting product or company to talk about. And then you enter this phase that's romantically called the trough of sorrow. I think of this phase as where you have a product and a market, almost like 2 gears that don't quite fit yet. And so there's no forward momentum in your business. And so the trough can last for weeks or months or sometimes years. So after
some people never get out of it.
Some people, well, yeah. So after the Democratic National Convention, we're in this trough, and it is dismal. We're making $200 a week to cover 3 guys living in San Francisco. That doesn't work. It's at this point where our numbers were up, we're like, let's go talk to investors. Seems like a good idea. The numbers are up and to the right. They like those kinds of graphs, don't they? So we get introduced to 20 of the top-tier investors.
Can I interject before you do that? Will you tell people how you funded up until that point?
Well, we, basically dwindled our savings accounts. Our parents were nice enough to help us out, for a month, and then it was really up to us to figure out the rest. And we thought we would get investment because the numbers were up. Every investor we talked to, like you've heard from others today, they all said no. It was crazy. These are the people who picked the PayPals, they picked the YouTubes, they picked the Facebooks, staring at our business model saying, wait a second, your business model is based on people publicly sharing pictures of their most intimate spaces, their bedrooms, their bathrooms, the places you normally keep closed when people come over. And you're going to publicly post pictures of those on the internet, and then entire strangers are going to come sleep in their homes? This is going to be huge. So people gave us this look, and no one could get over this stranger danger bias that we've all been taught since we were kids. And so every investor said no. It was the worst feeling in the world, where you're so excited about something and incredible people are rejecting you. It was a moment where I really learned, I think, a fundamental of entrepreneurship that applies to anybody, anywhere, is that you have this incredible capacity to reframe things. And so for us, we reframed each of those no's as an invitation to keep going.
Yeah.
And you can accept it or not.
Yes.
And so each of those, okay, they said no, let's keep going. Thanks for the invitation, we accept. So without any revenue coming in, without any, our bank accounts are getting this small, we start to take out credit cards. This is a great idea. So we take those binders where you keep baseball cards, and we start to use those for all of our different, and we joke that we did raise a round of funding. We called it the Visa round. The only thing is that Visa didn't know about it.
Well, you also made another product. I have a box of it.
We do. So this is where our story takes a bit of a sideways trek. So come with me on this journey, where it's now September of 2008. We're just in the pits of the Trophosaurum. Our co-founder Nate moves back to Boston to be with his girlfriend. So the band's kind of coming apart. And Brian and I, late one night, we're in the kitchen. It's 2 a.m., just trying to keep our spirits up. And we joke, because at the time, anything with Obama's face on it or McCain's face on it was selling like a hotcake. And we thought, well, we're Air Bed and Breakfast. What if we provided breakfast to our guests? That could be cool. What if we made breakfast cereal? What if it was politically themed? We could put Obama, that'd be Obama-O's. The breakfast of change. And we could have something for McCain. Well, he was an officer in the Navy. Well, obviously, that's Captain McCain's. A maverick in every bite. And so, strangely enough, these harebrained concepts somehow became breakfast cereal. We just pieced this all together with zero budget. We actually had negative budget because we're now $10,000 plus in credit card debt. So with zero budget, we figured out how to make breakfast cereal. We found a printer to make the boxes on commission. We found a photographer to donate some time, an illustrator to help here. I pieced it all together, designed these boxes. And we numbered each one on the top out of 500. We decided this is a collector's item now. We can sell these for $40 a box. And we send it out to all the media. It ends up getting on CNN. We did a live video with CNN from our living room. Became the political video of the day on CNN.com. And we sold out of Obama-O's. And every time an order would come in, because we had no money, we would take that money, I'd run to the grocery store in my Jeep. I'd go to the cereal aisle with 3 shopping carts. I'd clear the O's off the shelf. And the first time I'm in line with 3 shopping carts of O's, the cashier looks at me and she goes, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're Air Bed and Breakfast. We're this tech startup here in San Francisco." And she was so confused. I just looked at her and I go, "We run a bed and breakfast." And she goes, "Oh, okay." So we'd literally take an order. We'd come back to the kitchen. Our kitchen was ground zero for cereal production. We'd take it out of the box of one and we put it in our own custom design box, hot glue the top, ship it out that night. I mean,
had quite a margin on a $40 box of cereal.
So we $40 a box, 500 boxes of Obama-O's. We made $20,000 in breakfast cereal, which is how we funded Airbnb.
Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Now,
you were nice enough to send me one of those numbered boxes of each. I personally possess them.
That's right.
Awesome.
Side note, the Cat McCain's didn't quite sell so well.
Yes.
So we ended up offering a promotion to try to move those, but for months after that, we had just these piles of Cat McCain's in our kitchen. And it became our fortitude every morning, because we still had no money. All the money we made just basically paid off the credit cards, so we're back to zero. Awesome. And so we just started eating Cat McCain's for the next couple months. And we picked these high fiber squares, which was like the worst idea.
Joe, your biggest obstacle was this stranger danger component.
Yeah.
And you're a designer, and this is the part of the genius of Airbnb and your genius personally. Tell us how you designed getting around that real fear that people have. It's the main reason why these VCs wouldn't give you any money.
Of course. Well, I feel like anytime you face a problem, you fall back on what you know, and all we really knew was design. Brian and I studied at a design school, and you learn in design school that design is not just about the look and feel of something. It's actually about the whole experience. And so for us, the question was, we've done that for objects before. We know how to do that for an object, but can we do that for a whole experience? Can you design this Olympic-sized trust that needs to be created for two people to feel comfortable coming together in a home? And it was a question. We didn't know if we could answer it or not, that can you design for trust? So we took everything that we knew and we poured it into creating a fun and friendly web experience where people feel like they could trust the service. We use copy and tone and colors and typography and every design element that would engender a sense of trust with somebody. We made sure that every edge was clean, that there were nothing was janky or misaligned, that people could trust the service that we were delivering to them. We also learned about this, we'll call it the disclosure principle, which was how much somebody shares about themselves had a lot to do with how comfortable somebody was to let them in their home. And so if somebody messaged a host and said simply, yo, the acceptance rate was pretty low. If somebody messaged a host with like a novella about their mother and everything that's going on in their life that was like 4 paragraphs long, the decline rate also dropped. But we discovered there's this sweet spot right in the middle, which is, hey, I'm coming for vacation with my family. I love the art on your wall. So there's this art of disclosure that we could actually help prompt people to disclose the right amount at the right time to help build trust.
Yes. And that process, how long did it take before that trust level became more of a standard? And maybe share a little bit about how did you really break through? Because how long into it were you still not making money?
Too long.
Yes.
I'd say, the first 3 years were incredibly painful. We did raise some venture funding along the way, but the business did not take off for like really 3-ish years. It was really painful, and it really be a discredit to think that Airbnb just like took off like a rocket overnight. It took an incredible amount of persistence. It took an incredible amount of just this reframing. Every rejection, every no, every adversity we had, we flipped it into an opportunity.
Yes. You were encouraged, if I remember correctly, by a kind of a mentor to get in front of your customers,
Yes.
to get in front of the hosts in New
God.
York. Tell me a little bit about that, because you were only doing a couple $100 a week, and then you went to make those trips to New York. Let's talk about that.
So by all means that you would evaluate the success of a business, put it through a spreadsheet, look at the market size, look at our market share, revenue. The equation at the bottom would have said, shut this business down because it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Literally. So it took a belief that went beyond just normal logic for us to power through this. And one of those things that helped us was Paul Graham, a sort of startup guru in Silicon Valley, gave us this piece of advice. He said, go meet your people. His top line advice is to make something people want. It's literally on the T-shirt that he gives people that he works with. And so what's the fastest way to understand what people want? A conversation.
Yeah.
Go talk to them.
People forget that.
But there's this funny thing that happens when you're coding something, is that you tend to want to solve things through code because that's what's scalable, right? Like you want to have a company that can scale. The problem was we were way ahead of ourselves. We didn't have anything to scale. We actually needed to get away from our computers, away from our offices, and go out into the world and go talk to our customers face to face. You will get more from a conversation than you ever will from a survey.
Yes.
You will get so much more depth of what's actually going on in somebody's life, in their mind, the issues they have with your service, that we flew to New York, which was kind of crazy at the time, to meet our early adopters, of which...
And your business was what size then? You guys were
we had 30 hosts in New York.
And you were generating how much revenue?
$200 a week.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is not going anywhere.
And this is 3 years in, almost?
This is about a year plus in.
Year plus one.
So we're in New York. Brian and I flew out, and we realized there was a problem, that people didn't quite know how to take a good photo of their apartment. And we said, you know, I've done photography through my life. I took classes at RISD. And I said, why don't we just go solve this problem? So we fly to New York, we rent this camera, and we go take photos of our host's apartment for free. And they loved it. And so here we are in their homes taking pictures. We'd show them the picture on the back of the camera. And they go, oh, my God, this is amazing. My apartment looks so great. Do you want to stay for some tea? Oh, interesting. Okay, sure. So we're sitting on the couch. And suddenly, instinctively, you go into this sort of research mode where you start asking questions. How's it going using our service? And people would take their laptops out, and they'd actually show us all of the issues they were having trying to manage their Airbnb account. Hosts would tell us, I'm having this problem with your calendar, your payment system's messed up here, I can't really evaluate a review. These are all things we never knew existed until we went out into the world, got out of our comfort zone, went into their comfort zone to see what was really on their mind. And it was through these conversations where we started to demystify that gap between our product and market fit. That invisible space that was holding us back began to close. We would take their feedback and iterate on our product and incorporate these really passionate customers. Remember, like the people who signed up for your company, you know, the first 30 customers, first 100 customers, first 1,000 customers are going to be some of the most passionate, you know, risk-taking enthusiasts, the zealots of whatever it is you're offering. They have a lot to say if they're really into it. And so these hosts poured out all this information, which demystified this gap for us, and the gears started to turn. We posted the photos, we implemented the feedback. The next week, revenue went from $200, which had been out for about 8 months, and it jumped to $400. I had to ask Nate, is there a bug in the system? Because this is not normal. There wasn't, though. It was people actually starting to use the service more.
Because of the pictures, they were more compelling.
People could see
and
what they were
also
paying
had
for.
more relationship with you. They were more vested
Absolutely.
as well.
It was building trust.
Yeah.
With our hosts one-to-one and with our guests, they could actually see what they were paying for, and they felt comfortable booking through our system.
Yeah.
Versus other classified websites that had tall, small, fuzzy photos. One of the cool side stories, I don't know if you know this, but one of our trips to New York, I actually met a guy who was working on a startup out of his apartment, and he was also a host on Airbnb. His name was Andrew Cortina.
Yeah, I know.
Wow, that's
crazy.
wild.
Yeah. Is my mic on?
No, please, you're on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, yeah. I was coming up to stay with him. That he's like, you came in.
He charged you to stay at his place?
Well, no. So you've been in the long,
yes.
the long.
I was in that apartment
with the little.
I took pictures of that apartment.
Yeah, I know. He told me that you were coming over there. Now, how about that for a connected world?
Wow, that's wild. Did he pay for it with Venmo? That's
I was going to say if PayPal's giving you problems, I know some people at Venmo.
Could have used that 8 years ago, 9 years
ago.
So
it jumped to 400. It doubled.
Jumped to 400. So we go back the next weekend. We shoot more apartments, meet more hosts, get more feedback, iterate more on our product, and the next week the numbers go from $400 to $800. So we did the same thing. It was a recipe. And we repeated it every weekend for 6 weeks, and revenue doubled. And by the end of 6 weeks, we were making over $4,000 a week. And one of the ways that we got to this is a little known thing behind the scenes that we did that I have to give credit to, is we came up with a deadline for ourselves of when we needed to make $1,000 a week, basically to pay rent. And there's a term for this. It's called ramen profitability. Which is you're making enough to pay rent and enough to buy ramen. Which for us was a huge deal at the time. Like we'd be lucky that would have been amazing. That was like a luxury for us. So we our goal was $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month. We could pay a rent check, and so we had a deadline of when to hit this by, and we did this something a little bit crazy. We made up a graph from the future. We made up a graph of our revenue that didn't exist yet, between where we were to when our deadline was, that literally showed our revenue climbing week over week of how we wanted to happen. We printed this graph out about 8 or 9 or 10 times, and we taped it up all around our apartment. It was in the bathroom mirror. You're brushing your teeth at night, staring at the graph. You open the fridge, it's next to the milk. You're on the computer, it's like next to your computer screen.
Awesome.
this was everywhere. We became militant about hitting this.
It's like what everybody's talking about here, your own psychology, starting with that, right?
We just had such a crystal clear goal. And so it was just like, we're going to do whatever it takes to get there. If it means flying across the country, doing things that don't scale, that you can't do that through code, go and have a conversation with somebody. But it was getting out of our comfort zones, doing things that don't scale, that finally got the business on an upward trajectory. And it's from those moments that we've never looked back.
Wow. And what stage did you know this was the business? I mean, you know, you would arrive, so to speak. When I say arrive, meaning the foundation of this business was going to scale worldwide.
It was a couple years. I think, gosh.
A couple years after that?
It was probably a year or 2 years after that. You know, we were able to raise a round of financing. We start to hire a team. You know, you make a decision as an entrepreneur. There's a couple ways to run a business, all of which are equally great. One is you have a lifestyle business that helps cover your lifestyle. The other is you choose to have a business that maybe you want to scale it and have a great acquisition and an exit. And there's another path where maybe you want to really go for another impossible, which would be to create like an independent brand that maybe take public one day if you're lucky. And so for us, when we took our money from VCs, you need to have a sense of kind of which direction you're going.
Yeah.
Right? You can't take VC money and run a lifestyle business, really. So it's kind of like, okay, do we want to build something and create a lot of value for a bigger company, or do we want to actually try and attempt at maybe possibly creating an independent brand that could, you know, potentially be generational, like the greats that we really admired, which is, of course, you know, a shot at the moon. And we decided that we wanted to go for that.
Yes.
That we saw the travel industry hadn't really changed since the 90s when, you know, travel moved online, and it really become this race to just kind of turning travel into fast food. It was about efficiency and kind of like fast calories, right? Like, you kind of lost...
commoditizing it.
Commoditizing it. It was a race to the bottom of just comparing prices of a commoditized room against some other website. And we thought, we have a really fresh take of bringing the charm of travel back.
Yeah.
That people, when
the
you travel...
relationships.
People, very rarely have I heard somebody come back and tell me how great you know, a traditional accommodation room was, versus people come home and they tell stories about the people they met. They tell you stories about the time they got lost and they wandered down this other street or this alley they weren't expecting, and they discovered this incredible, you know, whatever, ramen shop, whatever the thing might be. Ramen shop. Somebody just told me the story recently about getting lost in Tokyo, in a good way. And so we thought that we had a real opportunity to bring back travel in a more authentic way. And we looked at the size of the industry. It's rather large, and we said, you know, let's just go for it.
Yeah. Tell us today, you have a giant organization, hundreds of millions of people that are utilizing your services. How do you keep the culture alive, and what is the culture today? And then secondly, where are you going?
Sure. Well, this is the biggest question. And when we made that decision to aim for long-term independent brand, somebody said, well, you need to get your culture right from the beginning. If that's the case, whatever culture you create from your earliest employees will set the standard and the DNA for what it's like years down the road. And so we became students of culture. And back in 2009, this singular company that was known for stewarding an incredible culture was Zappos.
Yeah,
so we hopped on a plane and we went to visit Zappos. And we did a whole tour of Zappos. And I have to admit, you know, from the outside, they were in an office park outside of Las Vegas. I remember getting off the van and thinking, that's Zappos? That looks like the film set from the movie Office Space. Remember Initech? I'm like, they probably filmed that there. How's that a cool, like a fun company? However, the minute the doors opened and you went inside, there was this whoosh of energy that you could feel. And the women behind the counter, the front desk, were like, welcome to Zappos, can we get you anything? And from that point on, you were whisked away in this incredible culture. And they had about 800 people at the time. Everywhere you went, the single thing I'll never forget is people were so happy to be there. And Brian, Nate, and I, we came back from that trip. It was contagious. It's like coming home from one of your events. Yeah. Right?
Yes, it is. Like, Zappos is like that for sure.
We were at the airport high-fiving security guards. They're like, what happened to you? Did you win something in the casinos? We go, no, we went to Zappos. What's Zappos? And suddenly we're marketing Zappos. So we get back to San Francisco, and we literally sit down and we say, we need to take the best of what we just experienced, mix it into our own ingredients, and make it our own, so that one day, if we're ever lucky to have that many people working for us, they're as happy to be a part of our organization as what we just experienced. And so we did. We wrote down these non-negotiables because we were about to start hiring our first employee, and we said, we want to get this right. Tony Hsieh saw us on the tour. We got to chatting. He gave us a tip. He said, it's a lot easier to mold concrete when it's still wet than to chip away later when it's dry. So get the hiring right from the very beginning.
Yes.
So here we are writing down our non-negotiables as we're interviewing people. These are the things that we will just not compromise on. These are the things that three of us will agree that we're not going to cut corners. And so we stuck to that at a time when, by the way, the numbers are starting to tick up. Nate is our one engineer, and the site's starting to expand. And poor guy, he needed like 3 or 4 engineers to help him out. And we ended up waiting 3 months to hire somebody because we were so diligent about sticking to our
criteria,
our list, our criteria.
That's really cool. Tony Hsieh, by the way, yes, have a hand for that for sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Tony Hsieh is a dear friend, and one of the things that they do at Zappos also, besides screening, that his whole thing is find the right people, not train the right people. Find the right people and then train them. And everyone gets trained in every position in the company. Literally, you have to work in the factory, you have to work and go get shoes, you have to do everything, you have to work in customer service. But my favorite thing is he then offers people, and I forgot the amount, I think it's $3,500 or $5,000, to walk away after all the training's done. He usually picks, I think it's usually 2 months or 3 months salary. And the reason he does that is because if that person is willing to be wooed away, it's that decision point, making them decide, do I just want the money, I can not work for 3 months, or do I really want to be part of this culture? And when people make that decision, it's different. And if they take the money, he's always thrilled because those are the same people who will be leaving anyway, right? So it's a huge piece. Where is Airbnb going now? I know you're moving, into an element of where you're including so much of what travel really means. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, to give you a snapshot, I'll enter that through the culture topic. The real compliment that we got through all of what we've built is it was a couple of years ago, we got a phone call of a company that wanted to come visit us to learn about our culture.
Cool.
It was Zappos.
That's great.
That was
that's awesome.
That was the highest compliment I think we could have gotten. So I like to believe that we still have a place that 10 years in and a few thousand employees is still exciting, it's exuberant, it's energetic, it's full of creativity. And when I talk to candidates, I ask them, I usually it's question 3 adjectives to describe their experience so far. And I can't tell you how many people use the word energy, or it's like you can feel buzz in the air.
Yes.
So big question for me is how do we keep that with scale? Because any big company will tell you that's like the hardest thing to do is like, how do you keep the soul, how do you keep that spark of when you're just a couple people in a living room or in an apartment or working out of a cafe, how do you do that at scale? Although the law of large numbers is working against you. So we do everything we possibly can to help keep that intimacy of the early days. So where are we going?
How are some ways you do that before you tell us where you're going? What are some specific things you do in an organization that large to keep that alive?
One of the things that we came up with, so for a while, Brian, Nate, and I interviewed everybody. And I think the recruiting team wanted to have our heads because we were slowing down the process. It was just not working, obviously. So we need to come up with a new way to do this. So we created what we call the core values interviewers. And we actually started training people in the company to interview the same way that we would. And they're a group of people who are part of the interview process that don't have a stake in the game. They don't care if the person gets hired or not for the role. Like a hiring manager really cares, like, I need this person yesterday, so I'm going to make sure that we hire them. So it's more of like an independent body to screen for, is it a culture values or a core values fit, much like we just said about Tony Hsieh.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's one thing that we do to
cool.
scale
That's
ourselves.
helpful.
Yep.
Where are you going?
Well, we have this dream that one day you can use Airbnb to book magical trips and experiences all over the world. And we started with one thing. We've imbued our values of community-centric, great design, and global scale into the accommodations. As everybody knows, that's just one of many decisions that you make to put a great trip together. And so for us, our big dream is, how do we reinvent the trip? How do we help piece together authentic local experiences from the time you start dreaming about where to go all the way through how you get there, to where you stay, to what you do, to where you eat, to who you meet, to what you learn and experience and what you share when you come back.
It's beautiful. It's going beyond a trip, really, to the journey. You go on a trip, it's predictable. You go on a journey, you don't know what's going to come next. That's part of what keeps you engaged, and I think that's a huge part of what Airbnb does. You take people on a journey. You really have, and you've been on one hell of a journey already, and still a young man. Pretty damn exciting. Can we have a hand here for Joe Gebbia? Of questions for any of the four. So raise your hand if you got a question, a burning question. Okay, yes, sir. Give him a hand. Give him a hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, everybody. My name's Jason Gates. I'm from Portland, Oregon. Thanks for being here, you guys. It's so inspirational, so awesome. I've got a comment and then a question. The comment's for Joe. My wife and I work in interior design, and we had an opportunity to work on your call center in Portland. It's awesome. So thanks for the business. Jonas, I got a question for you, sir. You're obviously very successful, but what is your biggest missed opportunity, and why did you miss it?
Oh, wow. I think I miss opportunities all the time. I meet a lot of people. I would love to invest in a lot of great things. I think so. I spend most of my time trying to understand what I actually get right. I get a lot of things wrong, and not think about things that go wrong. I think if you spend time on trying to define, the missed opportunities, then you're spending your energy in the wrong things. So you let go, you move on, take the next step.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody else? How about, yes, sir, right here. Give him a hand. My white t-shirt.
Hi there. One question.
What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Juan Carlos Fernandez. I am from Venezuela, from Caracas.
Give him a hand.
Woo! A bit of a commercial where Eye of the Tiger. This is our group. We have really good cause. As of today, we've raised more than $22,000 in a matter of 2 days.
That's awesome.
We're taking 40 kids to the Youth Global Summit from
And I'll match that with you as well.
Yes, we're gladiators.
You got it. What was your questions for?
Yes, I'm in the service industry. I work for Open Insurances. Is our startup. It's travel insurance company, broker insurance company. We want to go global. We started in Latin America and in the U.S. And what we're doing is trying to change the paradigm that brokers have, that you have to do everything in paper or you have to go through complicated things and applications and stuff. So we reduce the whole thing to a really smart, easy, quick and easy process for issuing the policy and then the claims. My question to you in Venmo and Airbnb is that, well, with Airbnb, we could do something together for the travel insurance of your trips. We'd love to do that. And how about, we're struggling with the growth. We already have 300 agents enrolled, and we're going to bring about people from any side in the world and start with a plan B, working extra hours like our friend from Glossier, and then convert that plan B into a plan A. So that's more or less what we do. We tell ourselves that we're the Google of insurance companies, of travel insurance companies. So that's my question.
So your question is, how do you're stuck at a certain level of acquisition of these travel agents? 300?
Yeah, travel agents and brokers, insurance agents, anyone who wants to do a second job. Yeah, okay. Escape from the 9 to 5, that 4-hour work week from Timothy Ferris, something like that.
So are you taking people already in the industry and providing a more effective way, or are you bringing people into the industry?
Bringing already insurance agents and people with no insurance background.
Okay. Who wants to tackle it?
Well, one of the things I learned from listening to Joe is that you outlined your goals at one point, where you printed the graph of the future, and it was everywhere you looked. So, have you done that? Where you've sat with your team and you said, this is where we want to be 6 months from now. We want to go from 300 to. If I ask you now, where do you want to go from now to the next 6 months?
Our goal is 5,000 agents in 3 years. And grow into that exponentially to 20,000, 500,000. We don't know.
Okay, so that's good. So you have 5,000 in 3 years. Now let's take a step back. So, how many in a year and a half?
1,500.
Good math.
Okay. Great. So then in 6 months?
700.
Okay. So now we have a clear goal that you have to rally your entire team around. And what I learned and we did this at Venmo too. One day I came into the office, and it was me and Cortina and 3 other engineers, and we said, man, we're only getting 10 invites a day. And we're stagnant here. We're just 10 invites, 10 invites, 10 invites, 10 invites. And we didn't necessarily know what the solution was, but what we said was, no matter what, in 3 months from now, we need to be getting 1,000 invites a day. And then every morning the conversation was like, what are we doing to increase the amount of invites? And we did the exact same thing you did. You walk into the office, you see the number of invites, and everyone is able to answer the number of invites that went out, and eventually we hit it. So, I would start by saying, in 6 months, we're going to have 600 new agents, and the conversations that takes place at the company is you rallying the entire team around what's working and what's not all the time.
It's about having the obsession so crystal clear. Remember we talked earlier this week, you're not a manager of circumstances, you're a creator. And you've got to teach everyone on your team, but it's got to start with yourself that this is what will be done. I always call it the tyranny of how. Most people are trying to figure out the how, and they don't begin because they don't know how, so they miss the certainty. So any great athlete, any great entrepreneur, one of the great powers you see up here is this internal certainty that says, I may not know how, but I'm going to find an effing way. Right. And it's that capacity to say, this is what we will do, specifically, declaring it, owning it, and then having a strong enough effing why that you together move mountains, and everyone knows it's not a should here, it's a must. I think that's the difference. I hear in your voice some shoulds. I don't hear the ownership that says, this is what we're going to do come hell or high water, even in the asking of the question. You'll ask better questions when you own it completely what the outcome is. But most people are more focused on the activity than the outcome, and you can mistake movement for achievement all day long, and you'll be very frustrated. If you become obsessed with the outcome, you'll cut through all the bullshit, and if not you, by having your team know it, you'll find the ways to hit it that no one else finds. The only way anyone becomes an entrepreneur, like the men and women in front of this room, is if they decide this is what will be, and then they find a way. Now, they may have to iterate and so forth, but they start with that with a level of conviction that nothing will move them. Go watch Churchill, the movie that just came out, when everybody's freaking out and countries are falling right and left, and everyone in that administration, including the king, says, I'm going to Canada, we're getting the hell out of here, and one stubborn son of a bitch says, never! We will never, ever, ever, right, give up. And he rallied the people. He rallied the entire country. He went around the politicians. He got the people in the street to say, we will fight in the streets. We will fight to the death. Because country cultures, where they just give up, never come back. But if you look at history, the cultures where they fought to the end, they almost always come back because the DNA of that culture is still alive. He understood that one thing. He was able to instill that. Your job as a leader is instill it, attract it, pull it, attract the right people if you got the wrong ones. It's like you might have too many. You might have too many people, even though you have too few, too many people that don't know you're going to make it. If you got a bunch of people that know you're going to make it, you're going to have a hard time. So every one of these men and women, the reason I respect them so much, if you listen to them, they effing decided, and then they made it happen. They shaped it, they created it, they adjusted their approach, they kept going, but they never lost sight of the outcome of what mattered most. And they attracted the people to help them, or they got rid of them and moved on. Is that fair representation?
Yeah.
right? That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Give him a hand.
Yes.
Give her a hand. What's your name? Where are you from?
Hey, my name's Lindsay. I live in San Francisco. So, God, this is so nerve-wracking. I have a corporate wellness company, and so I living in San Francisco, watching you grow. It's so neat to hear the culture that you already bring, and I'm wondering why I haven't worked with you yet. We've got Uber and Square, and I need to get in there. So thank you. I see why I'm not. For Venmo, I've been paying my contractors Venmo for about 2 years now.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful, but it's been me. So the problem is that I'm so freaking afraid to hire employees. I've been paying contractors across the country, me, and I'm afraid of what technology systems do I use? What CRM do I use? What do I take dividends? Should I give equity? All these freaking things that I don't know. Where do you turn? And Emily, thank you so much for just being a woman leader. It's phenomenal. Thank you.
Maybe, Emily, you could address it for her a bit.
So your question can you repeat your question, please?
So the question really is, how did you get past this point I'm at where things are going great? I'm so blessed, so stinking blessed. But I don't know what the hell to do. I don't know, what technology systems use.
Yeah, of course. So I think one of the key things is, first of all, just to keep going. It's a series of small decisions, right? Like getting any business to any of these scales. It's not one and done. It's a series of, inflection points and pushing past those points. One of the things that I think, you are so fortunate to have living in San Francisco is such a rich network. So such an amazing network of entrepreneurs who are at exactly the same stage as you are. Being an entrepreneur can be extremely lonely, but I think one of the best resources any of us have are each other. So I think through whatever means you can to go find other people in your space and say, hey, what are you guys using right now? What did you use when you were our size, right? I mean, I've spent a lot of time cultivating mentors and friends who are fellow entrepreneurs at companies, who have similar product as we do, who are, a little further along, and it's incredibly helpful to be able to gut check and go to them and just get advice. So I would say that's really what I would do if I were you.
Somebody else want to add?
I'd say that these are all solved problems. Like there are probably other bigger questions to be answering with your company, with your business. And there are people, like Emily just said, who are out there who are mentors waiting for an invitation to mentor you.
Were you afraid of, in California, we have the, you have to have unemployment law, or you have to have this, what benefits am I supposed to use? Do I trust ADP now to do the workman's comp thing? There's just so many questions.
So the feedback I give you is you're so afraid to make a mistake that you're making them.
I know.
And so the one thing these people have in common, again, they can step on me where I'm mistaking, they're pretty fucking fearless, right? I mean, this guy in the corner here acts like it's no big deal, but think about all the things he went through to get to those successes, all those failures, but he's not afraid of that because he's more focused on the benefit of doing something that can change the world than he is his own effing fear. And you need to trade out. You're thinking too much about yourself and too much about your success or failure and not enough about your client base. And then, questions are critical, but there's a time to question and there's a time to move forward. And you're asking questions before they need to be answered. And so it's really wonderful to anticipate. I believe, leaders anticipate, losers react, right? But if you try to anticipate everything, you do nothing. Right. So if there's any piece, there's a piece in you, and I think this is true of all entrepreneurs. We all have many parts of our personality, right? So, some people come across really outgoing or real quiet or whatever the case may be, but none of us are just those one things. I'm sure you've been with a friend and said, what the hell's going on with Joe here? That's not Joe. Oh, sure it is. It's just a part of Joe he doesn't usually show. He doesn't think it's appropriate. But if he gets pushed hard enough, that part will show up. Well, I really believe all of us have different parts of ourselves. And the part of you that's asking all these questions is not the woman who can run this business successfully. But there's a woman in there that can do it easily. There's a woman in here that got you where you are. There's a woman who got this momentum. And my bet is she wasn't yet overwhelming herself with too many questions. She was more focused on the outcome instead of all the activity. And if I were you, I'd say, who is that woman? Who's the woman who got you to get some of these huge accounts? Who is that person inside? Because she's a very different personality than the woman asking these questions.
Yeah.
Tell me, who is she?
She's strong, she's fearless, she's a go-getter, doesn't stop. A
Yes.
gladiator, sorry.
Yes. So when you talk about her, be here for a second. When you've been here, tell me one of the toughest decisions you made and you did it. And it was the right decision. And it was a tough one.
Getting sober 4.5 years ago.
Okay, well, give her a hand for that. Pretty awesome one,
I'm a Persia with no brakes. I'm invincible. Yeah, I win every single game. I'm so powerful. I don't need batteries today. I'm so confident. Yeah, I'm unstoppable today. Unstoppable today. Unstoppable today. Unstoppable today.
So that woman who used to not be sober probably asked herself a million questions and made her uncertain, and she reached for alcohol as a way to get comfort. And she doesn't run the show anymore, does she?
No, and I have to say it's a bigger thing is that my youngest brother died 2.5 years ago from texting while driving. So a lot of you have seen me running around today. So that is my true, I knew that when he passed that my mission is to help people find health and wellness. I was 50 pounds heavier growing up. I was bullied, the whole thing. So I know my mission, and just yesterday, bless my team's heart, they said, let's start a GoFundMe. So it's GoFundMe Corey's cause. So that's my bigger passion and drive. That's my drive.
But that person who will step up and handle that, the person who can say no more alcohol and not touch it again, the person who can step up and say, I've lost this member of my family and this is what I'm going to do to create some form of powerful meaning out of that instead of being destroyed, that woman can run any fucking business she wants, and that woman doesn't sit around and ask questions, right? Show me that woman for a moment right now. Show me that woman. Make a gesture like that woman. Say something like that woman. That's that woman there. That's it. That woman there. That woman there. Tell me, what's her name? Give me a nickname for her. What's a nickname for the woman who will kick ass and take names? She'll figure this shit out. What's her name? Because if you want to make your dog, how do you make your dog? You name it and you teach it to come when you call. So you should name the part of you want in charge and train it to come. Who is this woman who doesn't give a shit, who can figure this out, who can get a mentor? She doesn't sit around and freak out. She just steps up and handles the next thing. What's her name?
She's a wellness warrior.
Wellness warrior. Okay, good.
I'm not afraid to take a stand. Take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand. Come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm.
As a wellness warrior, just real quick, embody that right now. That mission is so alive in you. What are you going to let get in the way of that wellness warrior? What if you don't know which system to do? What if you don't know whether to hire people or keep them as contractors, but you're the wellness warrior? What will you do?
I'm going to ask people. I'm going to find out.
That's
gonna
right.
Make it happen.
It's that simple. Give her a hand.
Let you know that you're not alone. Holla if you feel like you've been not afraid. I'm not afraid to take a stand. Take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand. Come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm.
Give her a hand.
The weather, cold or warm.
Is it on? Hi, my question is for Joe. I'm Lindy from Southern Utah. And I was wondering if I could ask you for 5 minutes of your time because I use your services. I have a business where I have a big home that I rent out to groups. And I'm trying to change that into more of a experience, like what you're trying to do. So I think I'm one of your like test people that's perfect, because I live close to national parks and all these things, and I want to create this experience. But I've been using services like you. That's how people are finding me, but there's so much more that it can be. And so I just wanted to see if you would be willing to talk to me so I could maybe be involved in whatever you're trying to do going
Well, he's willing to talk to you right now. You got his moment right now. Now's your moment. Don't try don't be greedy. Grab the moment.
Thank you for using our service. First of all, appreciate you being a host. It sounds like you want to expand from just the accommodations experience into more offerings to your guests. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Where do you think, what have you spotted as the biggest opportunity so far?
The biggest opportunity would be as far as, so a lot of people come to where I live and they want to do something and stay with a big group. Like the place that I own sleeps 30 people. It's a big home that sleeps 30 people. And the ideal customer for me, my ideal client, is actually not so much just the person that's booking the Airbnb, to be honest with you. My ideal client will pay more because they are coming to do the national parks and do some of the other things that the area has to offer. And I can basically get a lot more money if they get that message. But I haven't quite figured out yet how to do this and basically upsell them a bigger package, but still through your site.
Got it. Well, are you, I love your passion for this, by the way. Do you, in the description of the listing, do you put all of the amazing things that people can do when they stay at your place?
Yes.
So people can discover that. You've got the host guide, the guidebook, all filled out.
Yeah.
And what have you done so far that you're seeing people are loving to pay for? That they're just like, oh my God, I'm ecstatic. I didn't even know you offered this. This is incredible.
Nobody has ever paid me yet for the other package part. They just keep paying me for the accommodation. So but that's like through this experience here, that's one of my key takeaways of what I'm trying to change so that I get my ideal customer instead of just the same customer that I've been getting.
And it sounds like what you're trying to do is you not just get more customers, but get more resources with those customers to get them to purchase more from you and you add more value to them while you're there, right?
Yes.
My first suggestion would be change the title of the listing so people know what they're getting. And then in the very first opening sentences, tell them of this. Tell them what you're telling me right now. Tell them about the amazing national park experiences and everything else that you can imagine them experiencing. And then I'd say keep your eyes peeled. Our experiences platform is in a couple cities right now, about 50 worldwide. And keep your eyes peeled for that to expand. And when it does, you'll be able to plug directly into it.
My city is a really good one for you to look at, for sure.
What's your city?
Yeah, remind me.
St. George, Utah.
St. George, Utah. Noted.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Give her a hand.
Thank you so much.
Last one.
Get along with the voices inside of my head. You're trying to save me. Stop holding your breath. You think I'm crazy.
What's your name? Where are you from?
Hi, I'm Jolynn. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. So, one of the many things we've learned in this session is that proximity is power. And we all came up, I'm sure, with someone that we chose or selected to be a great mentor for us that was really high up there, someone who was unimaginable. Mine in particular is Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She leads with her heart. We have similar backgrounds as children. We share the same passions in helping other people and drawing out their inner beauty. And I watch her every day. I listen to her. I try to model her. I try to exude her. I want to ask for her mentorship and her guidance and her coaching because I know that she can help me, but help other women and other people also in pain and find their potential. But I never ask for help without ensuring there's something I can give to that person. And we all think about somebody who we're like, what can I give that person that is so high up and accomplished all of these things? And I just wonder, when you sought out mentors in the same position, what did you offer? And what do you recommend for all of us and how we can position ourselves to be able to offer something to people of that stature?
Good question. Who'd like to take it?
Well, I think the way you just spoke is enough. You're just being yourself. And I think if I had to look at the lesson that helped me get to where I am, it was staying true to myself. And I didn't really change much. And that's what someone like Oprah, or in my case, there was a mentor of mine, will.i.am, who was a musician. And when I first met him, I was kind of shocked, like, oh, will.i.am is going to be an investor in Venmo and possibly my mentor. And for a little bit, I was shaken. But as soon as I started turning back into myself, I realized he was connecting with me. And he was like, this person is just like me, and we all want to help each other, always. That's why we're here today, and that's why you're here inspiring us, and I feel like you just have to be yourself.
It's great advice. Yeah. Spot on advice. Anybody else?
Well, yeah. Well, I think it's like you're reaching for the stars directly to get, Oprah to be your mentor. And for me, it's like, take one step at a time. My first mentor was the guy that, hired me. He's just 1 year older, and he's been my friend. And then you constantly move on. You meet more people. So you don't feel, it's like, just get in the game and start working with someone. And that one will probably, hopefully, lead you to someone else. And maybe in 10 years, you're doing a show with Oprah instead, and as having her as a mentor.
That's good advice.
You reminded me of something that I reflected on in the early days of Airbnb, and even the attempts at companies that I had before Airbnb that you never heard of because they didn't work out, was how do you get the attention of and the advice and the mentorship from somebody who maybe has achieved a lot more as, quote, more successful by whatever metric. And the one thing I remember that worked so well for me in those early days was sheer enthusiasm. Like, I didn't have the currency of, a great product yet or a big community or whatever, but I had the currency of enthusiasm, and being able to enroll somebody in your enthusiasm and your passion for whatever your idea is, it can go a long way.
It's beautiful. Give a hand.
Thank you very much.
You got to do one now.
Last question for each of you, if I may. Share with us, if you would, what do you believe has made you successful? Because all three of you, I think we could take you out of any vehicle you're in currently and put you in another vehicle and you'd succeed as well. Mm-hmm. You found things you're personally passionate about. Jonas, you've done it multiple different ways, a little different. You found your passion, you found passion. What would you say has made you successful, and what's the best advice you'd give to someone who might be in that trough or struggling phase? Because we all go through it.
It's a big question. I think it's... you need to play the hand or the cards that are dealt with you. And I think, if I look at the most successful serial entrepreneurs, they always remember the times when they were poor and when they were struggling, and they really enjoy that perspective. And they're very happy if they would dealt another hand, because they'll just sort with it and play with it, because that's the only hand you have.
Yes.
And I think that's the persuasion of taking that next step, because there is only one step that's forward. There is no back. You can get maybe another Visa card for your portfolio of visas, but in the end, you need to get the revenue through the door, or you need to close the business. So for me, that's the perspective of really, play the cards that you're dealt and do the best of it in every situation every day, and then just hope for the best. And sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not,
What's unique about you, though, that has helped you to succeed in addition to that?
I don't know. I don't see myself as very successful, It's like...
Yeah, you're a total failure. I was going to have a conversation with you.
So I think
it's a little coaching session backstage.
I think we need a long coaching session. That's why I'm here, to get some free advice.
Okay. Well, we'll strike up humility as one of your characteristics and qualities. How about Emily? What's your view? Why do you think you've succeeded to the scale you have?
Yeah, I think one word, and that's grit. There's actually a fantastic book by Angela Duckworth called Grit.
Yes.
And as much grit as I'd like to say I have, I actually am going to wet my pants if I don't get off the stage right now. I'm going to go. It was so great to see you all.
Give Emily a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Give her a big hand.
let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, and do it, and do it, let's live it up and do
Let her hear ya.
and do it, and do it, do it, do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, do it, do it, do it. Here we come, here we go, we got it.
Well, in case anybody else has to do that shortly, we'll finish with the last two. Let's make sure somebody grabs her. We'll have her back for the final at the end for the picture. What would you say? Why do you think it is you've succeeded at such a large scale?
I think for me, it's always finding a way to continue to dream. So when life gets tough and things seem in your face all the time, what I try to do is take a step back and dream. And then I tell myself, dream until it comes true.
It's beautiful. And you, like you said earlier, you've stuck with who you are. You've never tried to be something that you're not. I think that's huge. I think so many people adapt. And in adapting, you lose all your congruency, you lose all your conviction, you lose your capacity to influence because the truth is gone now. Now you're a projection of the truth. It's not the same.
Yeah, be yourself.
Yeah, I see that. That's a huge piece for you.
And it may be hard sometimes because lots of times people will try to change you because they want them to be what they are. But as I think as I've gone on, I've realized how precious uniqueness can be.
Yes.
And uniqueness can lead to, big things.
Joe, what do you think has caused you and you and your team together, obviously, it's true in everybody's case, but to get to the level that you have? I mean, this is extraordinary, the impact you're having.
I'm reminded of this idea of playing with people who are better than you.
Yeah.
And that goes back to a 7th grade basketball coach who told me as I got into basketball, he said, Joe, if you want to make the high school team one day, start playing with people who are better than you. And so that meant playing with people who are older than me, bigger than me, stronger than me, had more experience than I did. And I absolutely started, in the gym, I wouldn't go play with my friends because they were my age. I'd actually go play with the guys that were older than me.
Really smart.
And, you learn so much from that experience. And so I think I've applied that to my life ever since.
Yes.
And certainly with Airbnb, surrounding myself with Brian and Nate, by the way, has been like one of the best decisions I've ever made because they are so good at what they do.
Yes.
They so far excel at things that I'm not good at that I think, we often say we're like a 3-legged stool. If you took one of the legs off, the stool would fall over.
Yeah.
And so I think surrounding yourself with people who are better than you and people who compliment you.
Yes. I want to thank all 3 of you, all 4 of you, if you're just coming back. You couldn't afford to hire these individuals. They've all done better than most people ever do in 10 lifetimes. They came here because they really wanted to share their history, their experience with you, people they don't even know. This is how generous these human beings are. So thank you from my heart to yours for doing this. Let's give a big hand for everybody here. Love you, buddy.
This is what you came for.
A group of 3, quick massage. 1 first in the middle, 2 massage 1.
We say nothing more than we need. I say your place when we leave. This is what you came for. Strikes every time she moves. Everybody's watching her, but she's looking at you. is what you came for. Lightning strikes every time she moves.
Go ahead and switch. Switch. Somebody else in the middle. Go, go, go. Somebody else.
Wish I could spin my world into reverse just to have you back again. There's no getting over, there's no getting over. It's just no getting over you.
Switch one more time. Switch.
Bring it back.
Add more value than anybody else. Add more value.
I tried to masquerade the pain. That's why I'm next to the roof. Dance to the groove, but there is no. Baby, it feels so to dance to the beat of that heat between you and I. Free to the moment, light. We like to live life and pour them shots up in the. But there is no. I'm a party and 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 I'm a party and party and party and party and party. All the things I know right now, if I only knew back then, there's no getting over, just no getting over you. Wish I could spin my world into reverse just to have you back again. There's no getting over, there's no getting over. It's just no getting over you. I'm a party and 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 party. I'm a party and 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 I'm a party and party and party. Bring it back. People in the play.
Face a group of 3 people. Put one person in the middle. That person now is the lead dancer. They're the lead dancer. You're going to match and mirror whatever they do. Work it, work it, work it. Go, 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 go. Good job.
I'm a party and 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 I'm a party and party and party and party and party and party and party. I've been everywhere, man, looking for you, babe, searching for you, babe. Where have you been?
Switch. Somebody else in the middle. Somebody else in the middle. You're the lead dancer. Go, 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 go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we forgot to say goodbye to Facebook Live. Give a big hand to everybody watching along with us over there. If you like more about it, check it out. We're going to take our break now for 1 hour. Look at your watch. Actually, an hour. I've got back in the room at 6 p.m. Back in the room at 6 p.m. sharp.